Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed. Hey guys, welcome to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. This is season 5, episode 6, brought to you by the Sports Empire Network. For all your podcast needs, everything NBA, NFL, we are their hockey content. If you like hockey, follow us also at the Sports Empire Network. Hey, Pavel, welcome back, man, to episode 6.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. We have another jam-packed show with a great interview. He is returning to the show. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But remember, guys, to share, like, subscribe to our channel on Facebook, on YouTube. We appreciate the view. It really helps us out. We're here every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for all your hockey needs. We got a website, Evan, right? And we have quite a few articles that are consistently going up about all things hockey, not just the NHL. You've got Evan's prospect pool coming up. You've got the KHL and Patrick Conway talking about all things going on in that league. You've got my weekly updates that are happening. And you've got the odd article that we talk about. Like, Evan, I loved your articles on our goalies voodoo or not. And they are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't see them how they're voodoo or not. You know what? Because our show is jam-packed, what we're ready to do is go to our guest headliner tonight. Hey guys, welcome. We want to welcome back Darryl Wolski. He is a hockey agent. He created the 2112 Hockey Agency. He works with NCAA, college family advisor. He places people in hockey leagues all around the world, local in North America, Europe, around any league you could possibly think of. And if he hasn't thought of it, send him a note because he might be game to send him there too. Darryl, welcome back to Two Guys in Hockey Talk.
Hey, I remember last time we did this, I was in a parking lot in Winnipeg somewhere. It was 3,000 below. That's all I remember.
You came on and you shared some great stories, both on and off air, and we appreciated you. So welcome back. And I know that, we usually ask a specific question for our guests first time, but since you've been on, we wanted to get your take on how things are going for you so far and how pumped are you about the new season?
I'm really pumped about the new Leafs goal song. Anyways,
You're done with Hall & Oates? No
a little bit of a sarcasm there. You know, it's funny how the Leafs goal song is even making any press. This is how pathetic it is. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, like, oh, so now Kid Cudi's in and Hall & Oates is out. Like, is this really even a conversation?
I mean, I guess the people going, anything Toronto related, you're always going to find something trending, right, on X. So,
yeah, I get it. It's Toronto related, but just like, and you know what? Actually, I think that the Leafs organization maybe put a little bit of thought and effort into this one, and I don't know. I don't know if Dubas loved the song and that's why it's gone, or I don't know if Shanahan hated it. Who knows?
Let me quickly ask Darryl a question. So, Darryl, who is the greatest Toronto Maple Leaf of all time?
Mike Palmateer.
Woo.
What was it, him or Peter Ing? So we always, whenever I see those things on Twitter, say who's the greatest Leaf of all time, and I'll just put Peter Ing up just for the fun of it because it's quick and easy. But who is the greatest Leaf of all time? Could be Felix Potvin in my era. I thought Felix Potvin was a superstar. I had a chance to meet the late Boreas Salming when I was in Stockholm when I first got in this business, and
Wow.
was sitting with Walter Olsen, who's an agent in Sweden, and we're having spaghetti downtown Stockholm, and he walks by and Walter yells out, "Oh, hey, Borea!" I'm like, what do you mean just hey, Borea? It's like me going, hey, Wayne Gretzky, hey, Wayne, like, oh, hey, Darryl. Like, it was just very typical Swede, very Swedish, by the way.
Very nice, very nice. Well, there's a lot to get excited for not only Toronto, but a lot of the teams in the league. But let's get your take for right now, because you've worked with a lot of young players. What are your thoughts on Connor Bedard? Because that's all people are talking about. We want to know your thoughts. We know tonight he scored his first goal. Pretty big deal. Did it in 2 games, as people recall, McDavid did in his third. However, Matthews put up 4 in his, right? So your thoughts on Bedard and what he's bringing to the organization as well as the league?
Well, I think the league is a bigger thing. I think that, because, of course, Matthews is Matthews, but still, like Crosby and guys like Ovechkin, those guys are, Stamkos, those guys are probably on the way out, especially a guy like, say, Ovechkin. So you need a new guy to kind of, go around, kind of have a league to market around a new king, so to speak. And I think that Connor Bedard is that guy. And, before we went on air, I said, guys, I think the guy gets 100 points this year.
That's a bold prediction. So you guys can let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think Connor Bedard can get up to 100 points, or will he be under, right? I mean, barring injury. But yeah. Evan, what are your thoughts? Do you think he can get up to 100?
Okay, I just had to put that in the comments for everyone. So, but by the way, so yeah, we were saying 100 points. So I was mentioning, so I do have a thought. I want to slip from Bedard to a conversation with Darryl, actually previously to last season when we had him on. So Bedard, I mentioned I think he'll get it because he doesn't have to focus on the defense right now. They're going to want him to get his confidence up, get the game, get the fans in, enjoy that part, and then he'll continue to work on that part of the game. I'm not too worried defensively. I saw some really good takeaways. So, Darryl, the season started. Matev Mishkov, you shared a little bit about him with us, actually, on this show. I was working with Jamie Basco. He's a journalist with Flyers Nitty Gritty, accredited journalist down in the Flyer land, who was quite interested in catching a part of our show because they had a lot of questions about Mishkov. They didn't know if he was going to be drafted or not. They got him, and we knew that he's a bit of a very, we'll just use the words nicely, confident kind of a guy we talked about last time you were on. And now over in the KHL, you'll have some similarity about some of these younger players and stuff like that. But my question is around Mishkov, do you think he is the real deal still? Or do you? No. So talk to us about this guy.
So I don't want to mention the scout or the team, but so we're in Nashville, and obviously the day before the draft, and they had a chance to interview him. They had Mishkov. So Mishkov doesn't speak any English, so they had an interpreter there. And basically, Mishkov says, I don't want to play anywhere in the West or the Midwest because I want to be closer to home, which is so stupid. I don't get these guys who are want to predict or want to, I know that some baseball players said, well, I only want to play on the West Coast. I'm closer to Japan or whatever. I mean, really, these guys are making so much money. Are you really that concerned if you're playing in Philadelphia or Arizona? But anyways, and not just so. Once he said that in the interview was over. Like, it was just like, okay, well, see you later, kid, and good luck, whoever else takes you. And I know I've had some Flyers media contact me too, looking for comments, and they're like, we worked with Joe Morrow, who played with him in Sochi last year, and there's guys like Brandon Gormley who played there last year in Sochi, and they, not just those guys, but lots of people said that he's a handful. How about that? And, it's sad what happened to his father, of course. But, I'm not really sure who his agent is. It could be, it could be Milstein. I don't know. But he's going to need some direction real soon. Otherwise, he's going to be Johnny Manziel.
Wow. So do you think it's just the way he's approaching
his
the game?
agent is Sergey Fedotov.
I know who he is, and he's not a bad guy, but he's got his hands full. Like, I mean, if you watch the Johnny Manziel story, I think there's maybe not a lot of similarities, but there's some similarities between, how good was he in high school? Then he goes to college and just gets hammered on a Friday night and flies into Texas A&M and throws up 4 TDs, and that's what I think that Mitch Goff is thinking, that he's the next Johnny Manziel, which if he is the next Johnny Manziel, well, he can't even play in the CFL, so I think for Mitch Goff, he's got to get some proper direction in his career. And I'm not talking about on ice, I'm talking about off ice, because he has really ruffled feathers already at the age of 18.
Wow. So it's not the skill. What you're concerned about is kind of the way he's approaching the game and the way he's carrying himself. It's going to affect his overall game.
This is maybe a far shot, but way back in the day, like back in the draft, when Quentin Howden from Oakbank, Manitoba went number 1, and he went to Moose Jaw. And Charles Inglis went number 4, I believe, to Saskatoon. Charles Inglis never played a game of pro hockey. Charles Inglis was just a bad kid off the ice.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that. Never played a game. Never played a pro game. I think he quit after he went to the AJHL, played somewhere north of Edmonton, Whitecourt or somewhere, and that was it. Meanwhile, Quentin Howden played, first-round draft pick in the NHL, played Team Canada, did this, did that. Maybe Quentin didn't have the longest career he wanted, but my point was Quentin was a good kid. He still is a good kid, and Inglis wasn't. So I think that the game chews up these guys and spits them out even quicker now than back in the Quentin Howden, Charles Inglis era.
So there was a comment there that Evan posted from Kyle, who's a big Boston guy, and of course they're playing back-to-back, which is impressive that they're able to play that well after beating Pittsburgh. And he thinks that Bedard can get 100 points, so there's one on your side. But I guess I want to ask the question, because you've been around a lot of these younger players. What is that fine line between confidence and cockiness, that arrogance that you sometimes see, but you also need that confidence to be like, I can be the best of the best, and I can play in the best league in the world. Like, how do you differentiate that? And can you teach that?
That's
can
good.
you change
That's
that
good
in the player?
That's a great question. Like, you could be Donald Trump or not be Donald Trump, right? I look at a guy like Ryan Reeves, who I know personally, and Reaver to me doesn't come off as cocky. He's very confident. He plays a different role than a lot of guys. And I think a guy like Reaver is good for the game, especially in Toronto. They haven't had a guy like Reaver in a long time that's going to go and answer the bell like he did tonight in the game against Montreal. The difference between cocky and confident, that's a hard one. I think that in hockey, you don't see it as much as maybe in basketball and football. I just think that there's different conditioning, there's different training in the junior levels and high school levels in hockey to kind of make guys a little bit more grounded. And like I said, like the guys that aren't grounded, they're out. I remember talking to Brad Berry in North Dakota one time, and Brad said to me, he says, they can snap their fingers and have their choice of basically any player in the world. So if you have any kind of bad off-ice attitude, see you later. You're out. And so it doesn't matter if you're a first-round draft pick or a seventh-round draft pick. Attitude really means something. But I think a lot of guys, this is where they need direction. They need direction from somebody, whether they're agent or advisor or somebody like myself. Probably somebody that's not too close to them, like their family. They need somebody to say to them, hey, slow down here. Like, a great example is in your backyard is Evander Kane. And I think that Evander Kane has dialed it in from his Winnipeg days to his Edmonton days. I think Evander Kane has dialed it in, and he's not doing that stupid thing, putting like the $50,000 up to his ear and stuff like that. Those stupid things he was doing. I don't see Evander Kane doing that now.
I think I will in his defense, not necessarily just specifically that for Evander Kane, is that there's more of a lack of showmanship from players. They sometimes can come off as robotic, and so when we expect hockey players, unlike basketball players who are very charismatic and colorful have some pretty interesting takes, and they have personalities. Hockey's a little bit more reserved, where you kind of have a script and you say these things. I will say that someone that you've kind of alluded to in that similarity would be Brad Marchand with his antics, and how now he's the captain of the Boston Bruins, and he's really dialed it back in terms of his play. Now, can he still play that goon-like, rat face, quote unquote, a mean spirit? Of course, but you definitely see that they held it back. So it's interesting to see how Michkov will develop coming into the league. What leadership is going to be brought in, maybe particularly a Russian player that's an older veteran to support him in that transition into the NHL. But in terms of, other prospects that are coming into the game, players like Logan Cooley out in Arizona, what are your thoughts on him? Or is there anyone that we're not really talking about? Because this year's Calder's race is going to be exciting, but should we be keeping an eye on someone specifically that you think, hey, check this kid out?
Well, and not that he's going to play this year, but he's a kid in my backyard. And speaking of the Flyers, as a goalie, Carson Bjarnason. I think that Bjarnason is a guy that probably should have went higher in the draft than he did. The Brandon Wheat Kings were not that great last year, and I think that really affected Carson, plus some injuries. I truly think that this kid is, he could be the next Carter Hart. I think he's that good. Of course, he's going to come back and play in Brandon this year and on. And maybe he gets a chance playing at the World Juniors. I don't know. But, like going to a guy like, say, like Cooley, for example, when he turned pro, I think all the fans of Minnesota were so upset. And I don't know why they're upset, because what else can this guy do? What's he going to do at the NCAA level? This is the same speech I have with high school players in Minnesota when they're a sophomore and they get 125 points in 25 games with Edina or whatever team, and they're going to come back for their senior year and get, 200 points in 25 games? What's the point? So for a guy like Cooley, good for him to sign, I think, because, he's got to show that he is in that Bedard conversation, which I think he is in that Bedard conversation.
So, hey, let me bring you back to Carson. You were just talking about, I have no idea if you saw some of my tweets that were going out on Carson, just on my working around goalies and analyzing it. So I guess maybe because I don't see him like maybe you do in the backyard, you're saying with the Brandon Wheat King. So is there a lot of high quality chances that have affected his stat lines? Is that part of the issue possibly? Because his stat lines don't look strong, like you're mentioning, for a goalie. I mean, it's going back to the Patrick Waugh days, but is that probably the thing that's really affected him?
Well, I just think that, like, the Wheat Kings, Marty Murray came in and took over halfway through, and he tried to save the day in Brandon, and he just didn't have the horses to work with. And I think that, also Bjarnason had a couple injuries too, but I still, like when the draft is being talked around Christmas time, like Bjarnason's being talked about as the number one goalie to go in the draft. Of course, things change quickly and things happen. Yeah. But if he was on a higher profile team, like say he was on a London, he was on one of those teams like that. He was playing Quebec. There's a guy that for sure is going to be a first round draft pick just because of the team he's on too. I think that is a big factor when you're on a basically a team that didn't make playoffs, which Brandon was. You don't get nobody extra looks from those pro scouts in that. So you're just going by what you see, and he didn't play that much down the stretch. So I still believe from what I've seen, and I'm an old goalie, I haven't seen a goalie like Carson Bjarnason in Brandon since Trevor Kidd.
Wow. Okay.
And sorry, Tyler Plant, if you're watching this, but
yeah,
I love you, Tyler Plant, but I still believe that Carson's a better goalie than Tyler Plant.
So are you working with Carson, or?
I am not. No, a company that I'm played with is with him, but I've known Carson for a long time. He's played in my summer leagues and summer programs and summer tournaments since he was like a 10-year-old kid, and they live just him and his family just live a half hour down the road from me.
Well, there you go, Flyers fans.
I think if they trade Carter Hart down the road, they do have an incumbent, so to speak, a guy that can come in, maybe in 3 or 4 years, come in and be that next guy. Maybe less than 3 or 4 years. Maybe the Flyers bring him in like New Jersey did when they brought Akira in, and they brought him in within 2 years of coming to the league.
Yeah, the Flyers have some good opportunities, and you guys can follow Jamie Bascal on Twitter for a plethora of young goalies coming into the league. I still think that they shouldn't give up on Carter Hart, regardless of what they think, because he's had really good numbers for not so really good teams. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. But if you got a couple more guys coming up through the ranks that you can really develop, and goalies, again, it's very tough. As we alluded to earlier, Evan doesn't think are they voodoo? Maybe they're not. Check out his article.
No, they're not voodoo.
What we want to know a little bit, because you brought it up, and I know Evan really wants to focus on this and not the NHL. Talk a little bit about the Brandon Wheat Kings and what can we expect from them this season? Any players that should stand out, potentially be on the move? I know that Detroit has a few prospects on that team that dropped down. Thoughts on the Wheat Kings and their upcoming season?
Well, I think for Brandon, I think I'm not 100% sure. I think they're going to be somewhat better. And I mean, and I still believe that there's some guys on that team that are like a guy that wasn't really talked about much last year, but then all of a sudden towards the end of the year was Roger McQueen from Saskatoon. Roger McQueen was, I had guys call me from Ivan Helenka going, "Hey, who is this guy? He's placing Wheat Kings on it." And I was like, "Who are you calling me about?" McQueen. I went, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's like 6'5", 6'6". I went, "Oh, okay." I mean, I think McQueen's a guy that's going to really, really catch people off. And of course, now Nate Danielson has come back from the Red Wings, so of course that's a big deal for them. And I think from Edmonton, Brett Hyland, Sports Corporation client, oddly enough, to give Scott Bonner a shout out. I think that Brett Hyland will be a guy that's going to also be there. But I think the one dark horse that Brandon has, and somehow I got to give. Over the years, Brandon finds these guys, these import players, an import draft, and that Dominic Peter, he's from Ostrava in Czech Republic. Yeah. He's a guy that's going to be phenomenal. And, even the guy who's the Wheat King photographer said to me, he goes, "Holy, that guy." And he's a pretty good player himself, a pretty good judge of talent. So, they're now the Wheat Kings have brought in guys like Riley Dudar, who's going to be their new kind of player development guy. Chris Moulton's their director of operations and stuff. I think that they're going to be. I think that Mark Derlego and Marty Murray and Del Pedrick, they got a couple good players to work with. I just don't know if, like I said, Bjarnsson's going to have to be an absolute superstar. Danielson's going to have to be a superstar. And, like I said, young guys like McQueen and those guys are going to have to do really well. But I'm not really sure if they have the depth that they want. And I know Brandon's been making a lot of transactions lately, so hard to see what will happen. I think for Brandon, the thing that may be good for them this year is that they're not in the strongest conference, and there's no Connor Bedard's in the conference and stuff like that. So I think that they're going to be okay that way. And, like talking to guys in Saskatoon, and they just said to me, they said, I don't know how good we're going to be. And so I don't know. I think that the strength of the league could come from the Midwest or the West.
Interesting. Hey, so let's just make a slight change. So Ray, he said he's heading to bed. He's out in Jersey. This Hellebuck. So let's take a moment. Let's talk about the Hellebuck and Scheifele deal that Winnipeg just did a signage on. His question though was, even with this new deal, is there a possibility the Judge could still trade Hellebuck? Could this just be a part of a bigger picture, maybe?
I personally don't see that. That's not very Kevin Cheveldayoff. That's not very True North, Craig Heisinger style of action. I think when they get a guy locked in, like maybe in 5 or 6 years, maybe they consider letting those guys go. Or unless they get some incredible trade offer at the deadline and they're not in playoffs and some other team is in playoffs, they get some incredible offer, like maybe LA or New Jersey or something comes in with a crazy offer, or Buffalo.
Yeah.
But, I just don't see the Jets as an organization over the years who are fairly conservative. I mean, they are what they are. I mean, they do things a certain way, right down to the Manitoba Moose, right to how they run their practice rink in Headingley, Manitoba. Everything they do is all very formulated and calculated, and there's not a lot of risk taking there, put it that way.
Well, and is there a no movement trade, no trade or a no movement clause? I didn't hear on that one.
Limited to a certain amount of teams.
Okay.
But like Connor's agent is a guy from another Manitoba guy, Ray Petco. Ray's kind of like the goalie agent out there, and Ray's done a great job over the years, and Ray's a fantastic guy, and I'm pretty sure that he did the best he could for Connor. And I really think what he's done is a good job. And you know what? Like at the end of the day, like for the Jets, those are two big pieces of the pie that solidify the program. Now, Adam Lowry being the captain, does Mark Scheifele kind of get, pissed off about that? I don't know. Like, like one of my old clients, Scott Glennie, and I always said this to Scott, he says, is it really a big deal being the captain or assistant captain? He goes, nah, not really. And that's what's kind of Scott's opinion was. But I can talk to some other guys, and they love being captains, or they love being assistant captain. They love having the letter. I just think from a contract negotiation standpoint, if you're the captain of the Winnipeg Jets and you're going to get traded to LA, if you're wearing an A or C on your jersey, I think it makes very little influence on your contract.
Well, let's come back to that.
It does matter to some extent. I think some players do take it personally. I look at LA back in the day when they removed the C from Dustin Brown, gave it to Anze Kopitar. There was a little bit of rumblings that Brown was not very happy. There's a few other situations.
Yeah.
But I can understand sometimes the honor of being named captain for that team because you're representing that team. And I know there's, I think, only like 4 or 5 teams left without a captain, which you can kind of guess who's going to be there. But I think to some players it does matter because it shows that their leadership and their value. But I agree. It was interesting that they gave it to Lowry and then they signed Scheifele with that deal. And I'm wondering if maybe at the time there was the proposition done, but they
didn't know. They didn't know because they didn't know. Scheifele just came in. Yeah, the Scheifele thing just changed recently, right? So Lowry was the decision. They didn't know where they were going. But I wonder, though, and Darryl, maybe you can – I'd like to kind of move over on this captaincy thing just for a moment and ask you another question behind it. But when I look at Dustin Brown, we're talking – this is a little bit of a pride issue when you lose the seed, right, as opposed to, just who actually wants to get it. So here's a question, and I know we've had other people on shows talk about this before, about what is not so much the A, but the C. What is the actual responsibility specifically on NHL teams when it comes to the responsibility of a captain? Is it on? Because a lot of people talk about how it's off ice, how you got to do a lot of the liaison and stuff. Or is it just on ice, or is it changed by team, or what do you know, Darryl?
Well, what I know is that there is a lot of off ice, and there's a lot of responsibility that does come with that. And that's what I'm saying for some of the guys over the years I worked with. I won't mention their name, but some of them are, they're kind of lazy guys, let's be honest, and they know who they are. And I'm not going to say the names, but those lazy guys, being a captain is not for them, So you got to, and I truly, I don't know Adam Lowry at all. I know his dad a little bit, but I think Adam Lowry is a great captain selection, and he's going to be a great choice for the Winnipeg Jets. But like what's involved on a day-to-day basis, I see these things in junior hockey or even in AAA hockey in 18s and 16s about leadership groups. And I think a lot of this stuff is really blown out of proportion. I really don't know when you have like a U18 AAA team playing the CSSHL and it's an NAX versus RHA and, they got the 6-player leadership group. Really? These kids aren't even mature enough some of them aren't even mature enough or old enough to drive. How are they having a leadership group? And I guess maybe some of the younger players on the team would look up to these guys if they're a first-year player and this guy on the 18s is a second or third-year player. But I think a lot of this stuff is really, it's maybe got too much of a spotlight on it. I think, and I really think at the end of the day, people got to learn how to be accountable for themselves. I mean, sure, you're going to have I look at a guy like a Deion Sanders. I could see the guy being an amazing leader. I mean, and there's some guys like that.
Yeah.
You got those Mark Messiers of the world, but we're talking about a pretty small number here. Like those are 2 names that jump out to me as Messier and Deion Sanders. I mean, I can't think of guys. I know there's probably lots of guys yelling in the chat. Well, what about this guy? What about Larry Robinson or whatever? Like whatever. I'm just thinking about like Mark Messier is a guy. If you want to pick a captain in hockey, I think it's Mark Messier, and maybe I'm dating myself to that, but whether it's the Rangers or the Oilers or wherever he's at, he's a captain. I mean, and I think that guys like him really enjoyed that responsibility and the C that comes with it. Now, when you see things like, it's funny, I met him a month ago for the first time, Roberto Luongo, and, Roberto Luongo having a C, that's kind of, I think the only really word for that is silly. I really don't know, so if Roberto Luongo's not playing that game, so does somebody else wear the C? Like, I forget even what happened. But you know
he
what I
got
mean?
offered it to when he signed that big contract with Vancouver, to wear the seat, to be the captain of the team. And this is prior to, I believe, Henrik Lundqvist still being there. Like they were there, but in terms of them taking on that mantle. So
I just think a lot of that stuff is blown out of proportion. I think in today's day and age that, you know, with social media and the amount of media and the amount of, you know, here we are talking on a podcast. I'm in Manitoba, you guys are in Alberta. I mean, there's a dozen podcasts like us talking indecisive, you know, in-depth coverage about hockey. I think that, you know, and between Twitter and Instagram, boy, I tell you what, that microscope is very, 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 very in-depth. And I think if a guy is going to do anything, you know, you saw it happen with Kevin Constantine, you know, boom, you're gone. I think like there's really no second chances anymore. And you really, really, you got to play by the rules on and off the ice or you're out. Simple as that.
All right. Well, I was going to say Sidney Crosby. That's who I would think as the captain on and off the ice from everything that I hear. I know with some of our Pittsburgh folk, they talk about what he does behind the scenes. He does a lot in that manner. Let's go out with two things. We got about 5-7 minutes left here. So why don't we go out before we do, we just kind of want to get your take on some ideas, how you, maybe a storyline that you're really looking forward to this year in the NHL. But before that, just around prospects this year, going into next year. And again, I know I'm the prospect guy. Probably Phil doesn't give a crap what's happening in 2024. Any thoughts or people who you're really keeping your eye on? They could be later in the first round, second, third possibilities. But just maybe mention a name or two that's kind of.
Well, and you know, and I think like when I really look at what's coming up in the draft and what could be potentially out there, I'm working with one goalie specifically. He's a Swiss goalie, and his name is Santo Simchin. And Santo is a guy playing for North Iowa Bulls in the NA. Also, there's another up-and-coming Swedish goalie that's being really highly touted. His name's Eric Olsson. He plays for Omaha in the USHL. So a couple of goalies I think that will be 2005s that'll be guys that you're going to see come up on the podium on those. And maybe they won't be talked about that much, but those are a couple of names to watch, I really believe. And, you know, going back to like a guy like Roger McQueen, I think that Roger's a guy that's going to be really a guy that's going to surprise people, I think. And I think that with his size, being a Saskatchewan kid, he's probably going to play 25 minutes or so of ice leagues this year. You're going to see a guy like McQueen being one of those guys. And those two goalies I mentioned, those are a couple of names that I see with potentials, you know.
I'm excited I'm going to spend some time and do a little bit of follow-up on that. And I'll give you guys my report of what I've saw in the last couple of years. But it's always hard when you haven't followed them to date and they're already ready for the draft. So
no, and you know for sure there's so many guys that are being, you know, like one of my Russian, he's not Russian, he's Ukrainian actually. One of my Ukrainian friends, he's had the luck of watching Demidov in SKA, and he says the guy is just an absolute great train. And he says like, you know, but this is the same. I'm not comparing him to Michkov for sure because I don't really like this person, but I'm just saying that the amount of hype on this guy in Russia is actually maybe higher than Michkov, and so now people are looking at Demidov as that guy. You know, he's already played with. People have to understand when you mention SKA St. Petersburg in the KHL, you're talking about the holy grail of Russian hockey. Like if you play on SKA, it's one thing. Like it's like Premier Soccer in England or the UK. When you talk about a team at the top, the Man U's, the Man Cities, and then the teams at the bottom, like there's a huge difference. And you like because there's really no salary floor, right? Because and so there's a team in the KHL, Baris Astana, Lada Toliadi, those teams, they might only have a $4 or $5 million budget, where a team like SKA can be spending $30 million, which is kind of like the salary ranges of those teams. Anyways, my point is that Demidov, I think, will be one guy, you know, if he interviews well and doesn't do anything too stupid, which I don't think he will. I think he's a guy that's going to be right up there in the top 2 or 3.
Fair. All right. Well, let's get your take then, Pavel. Let's get his take into this season in the NHL for storylines. Something.
So what are you keeping an eye on? Maybe three things you're going to be watching out for that you're either excited for, maybe a bold prediction, or that you're kind of monitoring right now in the NHL for this coming season as we get started, as of yesterday, of course. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I just think the amount of young guys that are starting the league this year, I think that says a lot. Whereas teams like Buffalo, for example, letting Benson start the season, guys like that, I think that you're seeing. And another thing too is like when you look at the elite prospects and you look at the amount of guys that were on PTOs, wasn't too many of those guys on PTOs that were successful. So, that tells me right there that they're going, you know what, do we really want to bring in a guy that's 35 years old and he's just another centerman? Or are we going to give a guy like Benson a shot? Well, let's give Benson his 9 or 10 game shot and maybe we keep him around. But for right now, that's one of my storylines is like the league is definitely progressing towards a younger league for sure.
That's fair. And I would say that I think because so many teams are against the cap, it's tough for a lot of them to even sign these guys between, $850,000 to $1 million. I mean, I was impressed with Blake Wheeler signed so early with the Rangers, but you look at somebody like Josh Bailey, who played for the Islanders and got released from his PTO from, from Ottawa, because they have to sign Pinto, and that's a whole dramatic thing right now. So, you got Riley Gregg filling in there, and we're interested to see. So that's an interesting take. Are there any others that you're watching out for, or any players or teams that you're kind of going to be focusing on?
No, I wouldn't say I'm focusing on any teams at all. For me, I'm always interested in seeing the up and coming, whether they're playing in the USHL or playing the CHL or even NAHL. Of course, the U.S. development team is such an amazing program. What they do there, I just wonder one day if Canada will actually adopt that U.S. development program idea.
Oh man!
And I think that I've never ever heard it talked about, but I'll tell you what, you could really get those premier players instead of them going to USHL or NAHL or to the BCHL. All of a sudden they're going to go to this program, and I think that's something I think that the U.S. has had a lot of success with that program, and I think it's something that they need to, like that Yzerman kid, like the kid, like he's an absolute
crazy,
and he's already committed to the Gophers in Minnesota. So, for me, that's what I'm looking at is the development of some of those young players, and like I said, and Demidov and those kind of guys. I know that as far as a storyline goes, I see today that the NHL and yesterday, they're not going to do the special jerseys and the special jersey tape. You know what? I see that guys like Brian Burke are obviously upset about that. I just think the league as a whole has way bigger things to worry about, and they have to somehow they have to get more eyeballs on the game. They have to get more eyeballs on U.S. TV. They need to create more, like whether it's the U.S. TV contract doesn't have the right times and stuff. Yeah. I think that's going to be the real thing, is to try and get eyeballs and TV eyeballs. I think to me that'd be a big project for the NHL.
Well, you should note that I guess the first game yesterday between Pittsburgh and Chicago had one of the highest viewerships ever in the history of opening nights for the NHL. So that was something. It was a big boost in numbers. I'd have to look up the exact numbers, but I know I was seeing some reports that they were very happy because, of course, Nashville and Tampa played first earlier, but because it's Crosby versus Bedard and all the hype that, as we talked earlier with the kid and what he's bringing, I think they got some more viewership. And I think it was pretty exciting to see that they're marketing Bedard as well as they are now, because they need to. But
yeah, and you know what? Here he is. He's the new LeBron James, right? He really is. And will he be the next LeBron James, that kind of caliber player? It's possible. I don't think it's impossible. What could I say the same statement about Fantilli? Probably not. He's not in that conversation, but for sure, Bedard is in that LeBron James kind of comparison, I think.
Wow. Well, Darryl, thanks so much. We actually have someone coming in live from the Vancouver Canucks Oilers game here. We're going to have to get to, but that's we're going to have to hopefully maybe end of season we'll get you at a cold day on the side of the road again.
Yeah, I prefer that. I prefer -35 on the Trans-Canada Highway and towards the Prairie, Manitoba.
Oh, man. So thanks so much for joining us. It's been a blast again. You're always a wealth of information and love your takes.
All right, guys. Thank you again.
All right.
And
You take care.
where can people find you in case they want to connect with you?
Oh,
if you're comfortable with that.
yeah. I'm a shameless promoter. 2112hockeyagency.com. That's probably the best place. Same on Instagram or Twitter. I'm 2112hockey on Instagram and Twitter. So my opinions are actually as I've gotten older, got a little bit more calmer. I'm not as crazy as I used to be.
Thanks so much, Darryl. Cheers, man.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. That was great stuff. So, guys, the guest headliner was brought to you by JR Web Designs. If you need a website, not just a good website, but a great website, you can check out twoguysandhockeytalk.com to see what the work he does. And he does a fabulous work for probably the best price that you will find. All right. Well, right now we're going to join Lost Trucker Productions. We have a new feature on our show. It's called Around the Rink. So let's. All right, we're now coming live. We are in Vancouver at the Rogers Arena.
Yeah.
However, we get black on the screen. How are you doing, Lost Trucker?
Did we get a blackout screen from Sportsnet again? Is this our package?
So I have to tell you.
It knocked me off. Here, I'll come back and try again.
Okay. Jump off and then come on back in, guys. See, this is what happens when you get live technology that's coming in. She was actually in the background, sitting in what we call our green screen room. And so she hasn't signed off yet. So Zylstra, you're going to have to sign off, go out, leave the studio, and then just re-enter back in. That's what you'll have to do. See? Okay, we'll remove her out there temporarily.
We even get black screens here. Come on, NHL. We thought we had a good agreement. You know, what are we paying for? You know, a local game in Western Canada, and we can't even get access to it. So
I know.
That was a great interview. Thank you, Darryl, again for coming on. You guys can go check out go back if you missed it. Great interview about some insights about prospects, the NHL, goalkeep, and just confidence in hockey players and what that looks like, including Michkov. Evan, any thoughts about the interview? Because I have some thoughts about the last topic we were discussing, a bit of a rant that I wanted to make.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? While we're waiting for Lost Trucker, why don't we go to the... Guys, Rant of the Night is brought to you from the MIHL's Kalkaska Battlers. Our new sponsorship has now been put in place. You got to go check them. They are in the inaugural season of the fourth season of a semi-pro league, the Michigan Independence Hockey League. Check out the KalkaskaBattlers.com. All right, go ahead. While we're waiting in on the Lost Trucker for your Rant of the Night.
So my rant is in terms of the Pride tape and the special event jerseys and stuff. I think this is a terrible take. I think this is a bad look for the NHL, and I think it's going to bite them in the rear. That's all I have to say. I think that if they don't fix this, it's going to become a problem, because I don't see the big problem of having your tape stepped up and have your tape colored, right? If you are getting a body of 235 pounds, 6'4" guy coming at you to body check you with blades and a stick, but you're more afraid of tape for what it represents, then you have some questions to answer. So that's all I'm going to say. I think this is a bad move for the NHL, and clearly hockey is not for everyone. Just my rant.
There you guys go. There's your Rant of the Night. Let's go back to Around the Rink. Hello, it's Zylstra Arts, the Lost Trucker Productions.
Can I hear you? That's so here. Not a lot of people yet. Well, we're still out here in Vancouver at the Rogers Arena with the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers. Home opener. We're going to be seeing the Demko and Demko those Oilers. Isn't it the game again? Got sandwiched them tonight. But
So the sound's cutting in and out. All right, everyone, just so everyone can see.
I've been there before. It's beautiful. It looks great. It looks like it's Demko versus Campbell.
Yeah, Demko versus Campbell is what we got on there at the Rogers Arena. Guys, if you didn't quite hear, I know the Lost Truckers' phone is cutting in and out on the audio, probably just because of the noise in the arena. But this is the opening for the Vancouver Canucks and the first night for the Edmonton Oilers, starting in only about 14 minutes. You there? You there, Zilstra?
Go. And this is our first one with the season opener. Sorry, I cannot hear what you guys are saying, so I cannot get back and forward. For now, thanks for having us, and thanks for sharing this wonderful with me. Thank you very much. And we'll have better communication next time.
Awesome. All right. Well, next time. Hey. Well, next time we're going to get you with the headset in, and we might be able to hear a little bit better. My apology. All right, guys. Again, guys, Around the Rink, brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers of the NAHL, owned by a disabled veteran that now runs the team there. His name's Andrew Dibble. We're going to have him on in probably in another month and a half to be able to have him on and talk to you a lot about. So I believe their season starts in another week or 10 days. We're going to get some stuff up on our site so you guys can be able to follow some of the stuff that's actually happening up there. So let's go back to your rant. That you were talking about. I gotta say, your rant didn't sound like you were as mad as you were making that joke about being more worried about tape than some fierce, sharp skates that could slice your throat open. I'm like, this is more about the laugh of the week more than the rant of the week.
I mean, I have a few. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, how much more can you push back before they realize what's going on? I mean, I can rant about Atlanta and the NHL wanting to push back to go back there in the market, and like, why? Like, you've tried it twice. It's such a pathetic thing to just continue to push for something that didn't work twice. Like, why can't you go to Houston? Why can't you go to Salt Lake? Like, you've talked with Utah owner. Ryan Smith. Like, I don't understand this like push for these random things. Why is Arizona still a thing? But I just think like it's a lost cause because the NHL thinks it's a distraction. This has become a distraction for the fact that you didn't want it to become a distraction. And when you have players speaking out about this and not making the game inclusive, what's the point? But again, that's just me. You guys can hate me all you want, but
So and I think you're gonna find more people are gonna like you than hate you. More people will hate me. I actually, just so you guys know, on my take on the tape, I thought that was the overkill. I actually was fine on the jersey fronts, and I've shared my opinion on that previously. But what I'm going to say is this is the fault, not of the players, not of the organizations, not of the NHL. It's the fault of the media and all the people that jumped on the few players. 1% actually had an issue. If you guys would have ignored the people on the ice who chose not to go out, we wouldn't have an issue. This would still be continuing. So that I'm not ranting about it. I just think now what's happened is the NHL has kind of, as Darryl mentioned, has kind of made the decision that they're just not going to go there and they got bigger things to deal with. But unfortunately, they've made a bigger deal about it. And I'd like to bring news that the PWHL, as we've talked about, the Professional Women's Hockey League, they've started something called the Respect Hockey Culture. So Respect Hockey Culture, I'll make sure, I don't know if I've shared it on our Facebook area. By the way, follow us on Facebook if you get a chance. Like us, subscribe on our YouTube channels, all the different and social media. Follow at hockey_2 or at Rev and Ev. But they have joined in with the AHL, the ECHL, the USHL, and the CHL for what's called Respect Hockey Culture. But today now they have announced, and this is interesting, even though they got the deal with Respect Hockey Culture for the ECHL and the AHL, it's obviously exclusive, not connected to the NHL, because the PWHL has come out and said that they're very disappointed in the NHL on the issue of the Pride Tape. So that's actually quite a big deal. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's good because even though they are supported by the NHL, they have their own voice. What's been interesting in this whole dynamic is that the NHLPA has yet to speak up. After everything that happened with Babcock and the Columbus Blue Jackets and how they addressed those concerns, they haven't spoken up about this, even just to make a comment about where they stand or kind of a general release of information. Nope. Yeah. And so, again, I think this is a failure on many fronts. I think you're missing out on some cool jerseys by teams and players who, you know, can promote the game in different ways. And this isn't just about the Pride, the jerseys. Right. This is about Hockey Fights Cancer. This is about the military night, amongst others, the Indigenous night, celebration night. Yeah. So you look at it and you say, there's some cool designs there. There's some really cool jerseys, concepts, ideas. And it's not to say that these teams won't continue to support in their local communities. Excuse me. Yeah, that's how much my rant is getting to me. I have to cough. Is the fact that it's allowing this little thing to interfere with a greater causes. And so I'm telling you right now, Evan, this is going to backfire. This is not going well. But that's my rant. I feel like this is not a good move.
Totally fair. Guys, so there was something that was mentioned. He brought up Demidov. Let's make a short shift. I want to go to my Revs top 15. Revs top 15, sponsored to you by Penny Billionaires, the electronic hard rock fuse band, who is our exclusive rights song to Invincible. You guys got to check them out. Amazon Music, Spotify, anywhere where you get your music, get their songs. Again, Penny Billionaires. I know that I was given heck recently, so I'm making sure these next few weeks I'm putting some stuff in. I want to go to defensemen because I didn't take a lot of time to talk to you guys about. And so I'm just going to take only a couple minutes here to touch in on a couple players, very important. So Artem Levshunov, he is playing for Michigan State University this year. Now, he is a Russian. I believe he's Russian. He played for the Dynamo Minsk previously. And he also with the Green Bay Gamblers previously. This guy has some great wheels on him. He's an excellent two-way defenseman. He's got good hands, good hockey. He's a modern-day blue liner, but he is physical, and he has not just, let's just say he's an Owen Power at the same age, I believe, maybe not with as much offensive upside, but he has the size to go along with this. This guy is an amazing mobility transitional play two-way guy. And I think that you need to look for him to definitely go in those top lines there. So anyway, I'm going to pull off and kind of go from there.
No, fair. I mean, if you're looking at the bottom teams that potentially could end up, and I know the season just began, but if you look at teams that are going to be at the bottom, like an Anaheim, like a San Jose, like a potentially maybe Montreal, maybe Philly, depending on how they do. I mean, John Tortorella can really get a lot out of them, you know. What one of those teams wouldn't covet a right-handed top defenseman that's 6 foot plus, 200 plus pounds, and can really develop into something in a few years when they're ready to compete again to be with their Stanley Cup to be a contender, right? I mean, you guys go check out tape online. It's great. You know, Evan does this list every week, and it's great to know who's coming up because then you can predict who's going to need what in the upcoming season. You look at teams and what their needs are, And we can go through it throughout the year while when we film every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. But really, look for teams that need defensemen, right? And I'm looking at you, San Jose, because he could potentially go there if they get a few more picks this year,
right.
if they trade away a few more of their big guys, right? So,
absolutely. Hey, let's. We're down to the last 5 minutes. We got a hockey game to watch right away here. We want to catch all this in, so we're going to keep it tight and snip everything in to our last 4 or 5 minutes here, guys.
Sure.
So I first of all, before you give me your final thought here, I do want to mention this was hilarious this past week. So I don't know if you guys know, but the Dallas Stars, Jamie Benn was found yelling at some fans, screaming at him because popcorn was being thrown at him from the stands. Now, before all the Dallas fans started getting on this, I think what they forgot is that Dallas Stars fans did the exact same thing to Aiden Hill previously, but yet they forgot all about their actions, and now they're all mad at someone throwing popcorn at their own Jamie Benn. Go figure.
Short-term memory. Isn't that what it's all about? It's easily to forget what done.
Oh, it's absolutely been crazy. It's actually been crazy. So, okay, man, storyline of the night. What are you looking forward to?
Signing for 7 years, $8.39 million.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Big deal. Looks like
Colleen this week as well
for Buffalo, and I predict that they will make the playoffs. That's my prediction. The Buffalo Sabres will end that curse. I also want to report it's come out that Brett Howden was suspended for 2 games.
How many games did he get? I saw the suspension, but I didn't see the game.
2 games for that hit.
Not enough.
I think it should have been more, but because there was no direct contact to the body. So that's just me. Not a good thing. I will, however, applaud the Golden Knights as a separate, because there's no easy transition that way, for their banner raising. It looked pretty cool. I enjoyed it with the slot machines. It's silly, but it's very Vegas-like. So props to Vegas. Good for them. And I think people aren't talking enough how they could potentially repeat. My last thought is that I know it was only game 1, but I'm worried, Evan, about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I know we had Hunter on last week, and he had some thoughts. You guys can let me know, DM me. But I worry about the Pittsburgh Penguins because they looked a little bit off, or maybe Mrazek was just having a Vezina night. I don't know your thoughts and
well, I'd like to say that right now, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear about Chicago Boston right now, then just hit pause. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So 2-1 right now. They have kept them to 2 goals right now. That's it. So right now, Chicago's much better than people are giving them credit early on. I go check out my posts at Rev. You'll find some stuff on Pittsburgh. I told people, man, I want to see you talking about this same topic. Obviously, Pavel's just talking. Some of you guys are getting out there making memes. You're like freaking out. You're calling them the retirement crew, retirement home Penguins. You guys are all out there. I want to see this at game 60, game 65. They have a lot of new faces that are gelling. The game also was the very first game of the year. Jari played I'm more worried about goaltending. I think Jari, we got to give him about 10 games and see where we're at. However, they're going to have to hold 500 in those first 5-10 games in order to be competitive. Like you said, when you got teams like Buffalo and other teams coming up in there, there's going to be less and less opportunities. So, and I'm with you on Buffalo. I am 100%. I think Darlene contract, getting that signed was huge. I think it's an overpay. I think it's an overpay, but he's so young, and it's all about what the future is now in the way they do contracts. So they're taking a gamble that in 2 years that this is going to be a good 2-3 years. It's going to be a good deal. So remember, this year and next year, not this year because he's not officially till next year, but the first 2 years of the contract, probably he won't be worth it. It's the later years where they're going to be all set up and the salary cap keeps going up. So getting power to that deal was the bigger deal to me.
That's fair. It's interesting. You know what? There's been a lot happening, and look for more teams to continue to do more work because there's a lot still out there to get done. Shane Pinto, I'm looking at you, as I mentioned earlier, in Ottawa. There's a few other players on the market still. Phil Kessel, will he find somewhere to play? Right, he hasn't been signed, and he's looking to to play for one more season, right? My worry, and maybe it was just preseason jitters, but is Jonathan Quick out in New York Ranger land? So keep an eye out for that. There's a few more teams to kind of talk to. But yeah, really, hockey is back, Evan, and I'm excited. I like, as my wife says, hockey. That's all it is. It's hockey.
Well, dude, it's been another ring-a-ding-dong dandy in the famous words of Ed Whalen. So in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe. We appreciate all our sponsors, Penny Billionaires, Sports Empire, everyone. We love you. Check us out. See you soon.
Cheers. Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.